within Minnesota tournaments, which will gather a lot more people, there'll be less of them. And so a safer way to play would be just two teams meeting to play each other without a large tournament. So this year, unlike any other year, I know our team, and I'm sure other softball teams, would like to schedule games on the fields this summer once the governor gives that okay. And so I just want to, I guess, raise the issue that as you build the policies to emphasize the need that's created this year to be able to use those local city fields so we don't have to travel to play games.
Thank you. Greg, do you want to give an update on where we are with that policy?
Yeah, and it was going to come in under 10, the third item under number 10, but I certainly can do it now. So we've been working on policies for opening both City Hall and the Shorewood Community Center and open spaces or field space rentals for the city. A lot of the guidance came out so close to this meeting that we weren't able to formulate a policy and have it here for your consideration. Because it was approved, it was an original emergency declaration by you and council affirming the declaration. It needs to be unwound or in that same manner. So it is on the June 8th agenda, will be on the June 8th agenda. We're pretty certain we'll have everything we need by then, and it'll be up for council consideration.
Okay. Yeah, I can't speak for the council, but I believe council, is looking forward to following the state guidelines. Cities have the option of being more restrictive than other governments, but not less restrictive. It's been my experience that our council has typically just gone with the state guidelines. So I don't think we're going to deviate too much from that, but other council members can speak to it as well.
I would agree with that.
All right. Well, Jeremy, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we will work as quickly as we can to put that policy into place.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak from matters from the floor? If so, use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You can find it at the bottom of the participants window. I don't see any hands going up. If someone finds that later, we can certainly circle back. But at this time, I'll move on. Number 4 is a public hearing. We have none scheduled tonight. Number 5 is reports and presentations. And we have a report from Dorothy Pedersen from the Riley Creek Bluff Creek Watershed Board. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you very much for having me, Mayor Zerbe and council members. I'm honored to be able to come to you after having been your representative on the board at Riley Perg. So I'm going to give you a kind of a little brief summary of what's happened in 2019 at the watershed, and then a few things that are really kind of happening in the city of Shorewood having to do with the watershed district. First, the good news is all of the lakes within the watershed district actually passed water clarity last year. However, Silver Lake, which is the only lake that Shorewood has within the district, did not pass for algae and for phosphorus. Most all of the other lakes are about the same as Silver Lake is. We also have Purgatory Creek that runs from Silver Lake, and that was also high in phosphorus. We continue to try to educate people through a variety of different methods to be able to work on the phosphorus amounts. And I'll give you some examples of what we're planning on doing for Silver Lake in a bit. During the 2019 season, we actually monitored 13 lakes and 1 wetland to see how all of them were doing. You probably have heard that Lotus Lake was infested with zebra mussels last year. And we have one other lake, Lake Riley, that has zebras. In response to that, I actually contacted the DNR and a resident friend of mine who's a water steward down the street. We got some signs. We actually put a couple of signs up around Silver Lake trying to get people aware of bringing canoes and kayaks in to be clean. And also on our road, because people do have a tendency to try to come in our road and then try to get onto Silver Lake. So we tried to do the best that we could with the AIS that we actually have in Silver Lake. Many of the other lakes have much bigger problems than Silver does. You've probably heard about the number of carp they've had to kill in a couple of the locations. And the AIS that continues to be brittle naiad and a few of the other weedy sort of invasives that we treat with herbicide, but Silver's been very lucky up to this point. I also like to talk a little bit about the education that the Watershed District has done. We've had a lot of seminars on chloride, trying to get people who are applicators for larger sites, commercial sites, to rethink how they're using the amount of salt during the winter, because one tiny little bit of salt into any of our lakes or our streams has a very long-lasting impact. We've also done some turf training, trying to get people to think about not having as much turf. Less turf and more natives, more plant materials actually does clean water a whole lot better before it hits our lakes and our creeks. We also have continued to try to train on shoreline buffers and shoreline plantings. You may have heard that we were going to have a Shorewood Silver Lake rain fair in the middle of May, but of course, because of COVID, that sort of got put on the wayside. And what's happened instead is the Watershed District has bought a lot of trees, and we are now encouraging people who live in the Silver Lake subwatershed to sign up and get a free tree and put a free tree on their property. The signups just happened, the opening of them just happened last week. I posted it on the Silver Lake Association Facebook account because I'm also on the Silver Lake Association. And so far we've had a pretty good response. People will be getting postcards and more information about the free sign up for the free trees, which they're currently growing at the Riley office. As part of trying to get people to take a free tree, we obviously are trying to encourage them to think more about the buffers that are around the heavily erodible slopes on our side, in the Shorewood side, but also on the Chanhassen side of Silver Lake. So that's, I think, a very good movement forward. Another area that we've tried to work with Shorewood on is in groundwater conservation. We, for the very first time ever for the Watershed District, has started working on what we can do to improve our groundwater and keep it clean for a long time to come. Right now, what we're trying to do is to promote awareness and educate people a little bit more about exactly how groundwater is clean. We've also joined up with you, the City of Bloomington, Chanhassen, Eden Prairie, to try to help fund smart water technologies. We are funding a portion of people getting new shower heads, new sprinklers, maybe new irrigation controllers. We will also be piloting a smart water meter replacement program, and we will come back to you probably next year with exactly how that's gone and whether or not we continue to see some improvement in the use of water, especially irrigating lawns. The chloride initiative that we've set up this year is also new. We got some funding. We have done a lot of education trying to teach people about how to better apply salt. I believe that we're really the only watershed district in the Twin Cities. We're kind of the beginning start of this whole idea. And we're working with 9 Mile Creek in order to get people to think a little bit more about how they use chloride. We also are in a research project with the University of Minnesota on stormwater ponds. I'm sure you're aware that your stormwater ponds everywhere in the Twin Cities are very heavily polluted, mostly with very high phosphorus levels. And so we've entered into a research project with the University of Minnesota several other cities and Shorewood to see if we can figure out how to better treat stormwater ponds in a more efficient manner. We will have some sort of results, we think, back towards the middle to the late summer of this year. And we're hoping that what we'll be able to bring for you would be much more affordable for all of our cities. I don't know if you all are aware, but last year when I came to visit you, we talked a little bit about the site that we have that we are working on Silver Lake itself on the far south end, just into the city of Chanhassen. We have a very highly erodible slope there. Everything from Pleasant View Avenue drains right down into Silver Lake and has created this highly erodible big gully that goes for several yards there before it hits the lake. We're currently working on an agreement with the city of Chanhassen. When they redo Pleasant View, we'll be adding in a filtration system there that will help with sediment control and also with phosphate control too. We're figuring that we're going to be able to save maybe 6 pounds of phosphate just entering Silver Lake alone with that project. The project is currently scheduled to be installed in 2021. So that's coming up for the city of Shorewood. The other thing that we've done for the very, very first time is we've actually gone and started looking at all the wetlands within the watershed district and try to evaluate them in terms of their health. So an exceptional wetland would be something kind of untouched, and a low quality wetland, obviously something that's probably been very heavily polluted. We finished up the southwest portion of the watershed district last year, and I believe this year we're working on the Purgatory Creek side. So we might have some more information for you next year about exactly how the status is of the wetlands are on the Purgatory Creek area, which would include, of course, Shorewood. I again would like to thank you all very much for your support of me 3 years ago when I came up for appointment to this position. I couldn't have gotten on the board without you. During that 3-year period of time, I've been elected the vice president of the board for the last couple of years. I also head up the personnel committee, and for one of the first times we really sort of looked at benefits, salary surveys, made sure that our staffing levels are where they really kind of should be. We've really made a very big push to try to look at partners to make bigger projects. We see that a lot at Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, where they're able to get into a project at the very beginning of the development, and they gain partners with developers, with other funding sources, and they can make a much bigger impact. So that's one of the pushes that we're attempting to make. And last year, as a matter of fact, we had a number of very large projects that went in, most of which went in with a large number of partners, either cities, the DNR, Hennepin County, wherever we could find money, join up with money that we have. I'm sure that you as a city feel exactly the same way that we do. It has more of an impact if we can get much more done all at one time. The other thing I'd really like to try to do, if you will find a way of perhaps wanting to help me get back on the board again for the next 3 years, is I'm trying to push the fact that water is just not one very small thing that we need to control, that we're actually part of an ecosystem. So consequently, things like soil health, the number of trees that you have, the natives that you put in, all of those things actually help influence the quality of the water that you end up getting. So if I'm given the opportunity to stay on the board for another 3 years, I would like to try to push an ecosystem view for the watershed, because I think we're going to end up getting more holding capacity, much better soil health, and basically everything really good for an entire system rather than just for one water source. I think that pretty much sums up everything that I brought for you. I would like to say I also have volunteered to adopt a dock. I'm one of those people who goes out every 2 weeks looks to see if I have any AIS on my dock. I have a few neighbors I've convinced to do that with me for silver. And I've also adopted a drain because I'm trying to keep everything possible out of the lake I live on, which is Silver Lake. 2 years ago, we labeled 37 of the bigger drains around Silver Lake, the Silver Lake Association did. And we'd like to continue doing the rest of the sub-watershed, but COVID has kind of put a little halt to that for a bit. We're hoping to get back and label all of them. The example on my adopted drain is I've got the one on Covington and Old Market Road, and I took 76 pounds of sediment and pollutants out of that just on April 15th, all by myself. So that's a pretty big impact that one person can have. So even if I can't get my next door neighbors to adopt a drain, I'm hoping I might be able to convince one of you or one of the other residents in the city to do that. So that pretty much sums it up for me. Do any of you have any questions that I might be able to answer?
Any questions from the council or staff?
No, I
I'll
think
just
that was
start by saying I'm always impressed with what your watershed is doing with this, with the size staff you have and the budget you have. And the spirit that you have, Dorothy, is amazing. I'm very pleased with what you're doing there, and I would personally certainly like to see you continue in that role. I think this idea of taking a holistic approach to the system is right on. You guys are right there, and trying to get the volunteerism as well to kind of help with some of the issues that are ongoing, because it is, as you know, a very big intertwined system. Is phenomenal. So thank you very much for your service and this excellent report.
Well, gee, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I just love it. It's kind of my thing. It's what makes me happy and motivates me. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to continue to do it as long as I can. It's kind of what I live for at this point in my life, you know.
Dorothy, I'd also like to say thank you. And not everyone knows the steps that need to be taken to adopt a drain. If you could share a link to a website or some information with the city, perhaps we could post that on our city website.
That would be just terrific. I'll get a hold of Julie. That's my go-to person there.
Great.
And I'll send all the information there and see maybe if she can get something in the bulletin and also on the website. That'd be terrific.
That'd be great. I think a lot of people would appreciate knowing how to start that process. Thank you.
It's not a large, hard thing to do. It's just one of those deals. If you go and do it, it makes a big difference.
I'd also encourage you to use our the Lake Minnetonka Communications Commission. We have kind of our own TV studio, as you might know, and they are always looking for content to videotape and put into some type of a format. And I think the Adopt a Drain program would be a really interesting piece of video as well. And we can certainly share that link if they decide to move forward with that.
Hey, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions for Dorothy?
No, that was a great report. Nice job.
Seeing none.
Thank you again, all very much.
All right, thank you, Dorothy. All right, we will move on to number 6, which is parks. Letter A is to accept the bids and award contract for Badger Park Tennis Courts, City Project 20-01. And we have a memo from our city engineer, Mr. Buddy. Who will be unmuted in the near future.
There we go. Thank you.
There he is.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. On the April 25th council meeting, staff had presented the final plans and specs for the Badger Park Tennis Court project and authorized advertising for that. We opened bids on May 19th and had a total of 6 bids that were received, so very competitive. The low bidder was submitted by Bituminous Roadways out of Shakopee, and their bid was for $179,947.95. Excuse me, and 95 cents. We have worked with them on a number of occasions on other projects, so they're definitely a decent contractor, and we're familiar with them. Their bid was 11% below the engineer's estimate. Construction work, if awarded, is anticipated to start in September 1st, in which they would complete the paving or basically redo the tennis courts. The only thing that would not be completed is the fencing and the court surfacing. We were going to save that until next year. So with that, the project is funded through Fund 402 for the park dedication. And when you account for potential soft costs for engineering, construction, admin, and legal, the overall total estimated project cost is $225,000, and the city had budgeted $300,000 for this project. So nicely under budget on this one. So with that, staff recommends awarding the contract to Bituminous Roadways in the amount of $179,947.95.
All right, thank you. Council, any questions?
No, it's good news. It's less.
I like this trend.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the bid for the tennis courts at Badger Park through Bituminous. I can't remember their name in Shakopee. Thank you.
Bituminous Roadways.
Thank you. Bituminous Roadways.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Cycle and a second by Johnson. Hearing no other comments, I'll call the vote by roll call. Labadie,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Cycle,
Aye.
Zerby, aye. Sorry, I went out. I didn't go alphabetical there, but we got it.
You just proved that we're all paying attention.
That's right. All right, 7 is planning. Next up, letter A is a report from our Commissioner Gorman on the May 5th, 2020 Park Commission meeting. Hello, Nathaniel. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I just want you to notice that Andrew spoke like a true engineer. He refused to give the contractor too much credit. He called him a decent contractor. You don't want to show any weakness, pretend like they're too good or too nice. I'm here to present the May 5th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. We had a short agenda, only 2 items, but we had some lively discussion as usual. The first item was for a special home occupation permit for Thomas Ramey at 5825 Country Club Road, right around the corner from City Hall. Mr. Ramey has a woodworking business. He runs out of his garage. You may remember his application from last year. His application was approved by the council for a 1-year term. Since last year, the city has received no complaints regarding noise or dust or excessive traffic on the property. In fact, Mr. Ramey delivers most of his products from the post office, so he really doesn't have people coming to his house. And so, and given his good standing with the neighbors and the lack of complaints to City Hall, the Planning Commission recommended approving the permit with 3 following conditions: that it expires 3 years from the date of your approval, that no exterior storage of materials or equipment are allowed, and that no signage is allowed. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next one. Okay, the second item on the agenda was a variance to a front setback for 5815 Howard's Point Road. The applicant plans to remodel the existing home and proposes to add a new garage on the property and convert the old garage into a living area. And so the reason it's before you today is that there's a zoning regulation that states a non-conforming single-family home may be expanded provided the expansion does not increase the non-conformity and complies with the setback requirements. So the existing home is 28 3/4 feet from the front property. The existing garage is actually further set back from the front of the house by just a couple of feet. It's 31 3/4 feet back. So it's about 3 feet back from the front of the house, but it's not 35 feet required under, I think it's, an R1C/S. So it's it's increasing the nonconformity, but not and not complying with the setbacks. But the commission felt that a variance was appropriate for a few reasons. Number one is the reason that it's not set back to comply with the zoning code is that the owner and the designer wanted to align the new garage with the roof structure. Now to move it back to the 35 feet zoning setback would have required that the roof line would have been offset by about 3 feet. It would have required more impervious pavement by extending the driveway, and then the back of the garage would have jutted out into the backyard. So it would have been an awkward site. And part of the discussion, why the commission felt like this was an appropriate use of a variance, is that Shorewood has a lot of older homes. This home was built in 1957. It's already a non-conforming home, and because it's already non-conforming, there are a lot of these older homes that are already non-conforming, and if you're going to have a lot of these properties, Shorewood is going to be littered with awkwardly built homes to kind of adjust themselves around these setback requirements. So they felt like it was appropriate. I will say it wasn't the recommendation isn't unanimous. The dissenting opinion felt like the reason for the variance was more for aesthetic purposes, and that it was more self-created because of the aesthetic desire for the designer and for the homeowner, and that it wasn't the minimum to alleviate the difficulty. So, but in the end, the Planning Commission is recommending approving the variance. They felt like it was a good candidate for a variance, and it was approved 4-1.
All right.
Well, I'd be happy to take any questions you have about it. I think I covered most of my bullet points here.
All right, thank you. Any questions for our commissioner?
Sure. I see the homeowners nodding, so I think that means I did okay.
And we'll get there. We'll get to them, and we'll have you available as well. All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
We'll move on to 7B, which is the renewal of special home occupation permit. The applicant is Thomas Ramey. The address is 5825 Country Club Road, and we have a memo from our planning director, Ms. Darling.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The item is a request for the renewal of a special home occupation permit to allow the applicant to conduct a woodworking business. A woodworking business in his attached garage. The zoning ordinance requires a special home occupation permit for any home occupation that's conducted in an accessory building. Staff have received no complaints regarding the property since the original home occupation permit was approved last year. And both staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the renewal, subject to the conditions in the resolution, which includes renewal of the permit after 3 years, no exterior storage, and no signage would be permitted. And with that, I would stand for the questions I have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for our planning director? All right, would the applicant like to address the council or just wait for questions? I think I see Tom is on here.
He's muted.
There you go, Tom. Go ahead.
I have nothing more to say. Everything has been stated properly.
Okay, great. Questions or motions?
I have a question for the homeowner. With the whole COVID situation, some businesses have really flourished, including home improvement type businesses. You've been operating out of your garage now for a year. Do you anticipate your business dramatically increasing in the next year? Or is it about, going to stay about the same level you're at?
I don't think there's any dramatic increase on the horizon. If that was the case, I would probably not be using my home as a place of business.
Okay, I have no further questions.
This isn't a question, but it's a comment, and you guys have heard me say this before. And Tom, this is not directed at you whatsoever, but the idea that we require that no signage is allowed, but then oftentimes home businesses will have a vehicle that is signed for their thing. To me, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I don't know how we ever handle that. Maybe Marie, there is no way to handle it, but I felt the need to mention it again. But with that, I'll make a motion. Make a motion to renew the special home occupation permit at 5825 Country Club Road.
I'll second that motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, I heard Jennifer first. So we have a motion by Johnson and a second by Labadie. I just have one question, Tom. What do you make?
So we specialize in like beam work. We make custom wine racks, so fireplace mantles, wine racks, floating shelves. We did the start and finish arch over at the Klondike. So that was kind of the dog derby that we did in February, which seems about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no more comments or questions, I'll call the vote. Johnson.
Aye.
Labadie.
Aye.
Cycle.
Aye.
Zerby, aye also. That occupation permit is renewed. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
All right, next is 7C, which is a variance to front setback for garage addition. The applicant is Janelle Hole and Curtis Buring. Sorry, I'm not getting that right. 5815 Howards Point Road. And we have another memo from our planning director, Ms. Darling.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This application is a request from property owners for a variance to the required front setback to allow a garage addition to be constructed 31 3/4 feet from the front lot line where 35 feet is required. The location map shown on the screen gives you a better idea where the property is located. You can see now on the aerial photo how it's located. Here's the site plan showing the existing garage being converted into living area and a new garage added to the south of the existing home. Staff and the Planning Commission have reviewed the request according to the variance criteria and find that the applicant has met the criteria. Although, as Commissioner Gorham had indicated, it was a split decision. The Planning Commission ultimately found that the applicant had presented practical difficulties and the variance was the minimum request to alleviate those difficulties. They also found it was consistent with the comprehensive plan and the intent of the zoning ordinance and would not impact the public welfare or other improvements in the area. Subject to the condition that the applicant acquire all necessary permits prior to constructing the garage, staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of the request.
All right, thank you. And I see the applicants are here. Would you like to address the council or just wait for questions?
I think we'll wait for questions, I guess.
Wait for questions.
Okay.
Mr. Gorham did a very good job explaining, so I appreciate that.
All right. Council, any questions for staff or the applicant?
I was also at the Planning Commission meeting, and although there was one dissenting opinion, I do feel that this is an appropriate situation for a variance. And this is a property that literally I go past numerous times in one day since I'm just up the road from them. And I do feel that the variance is going to be an improvement to the neighborhood and to this particular parcel.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I agree with Councilmember Labadie. I think it's reasonable, and I also think it will do. I think it's a nice improvement.
Okay.
I agree, and I would also like to say, as part of the reason we have, the Planning Commission, is to have a strict interpretation, or at least a good discussion on it. So I appreciate, the detailed look.
Well, with that, I would like to make a motion to approve the front setback variance request for the property located at 5815 Howards Point Road.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Labadie and a second by Cycle. I'll do a roll call vote. Johnson,
Aye.
Labadie,
Aye.
Cycle,
Aye.
Zerby votes aye also. Thank you for attending, and your application your variance is approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and
You're
Council. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your question.
Yeah,
Looking
Good
forward to
luck with your project.
yeah. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. We'll move on to number 8, which is engineering and public works. Letter A is notice for public hearing for the Mary Lake Outlet, City Project 19-09, and we have a memo from our city engineer, Mr. Buddy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item tonight is really just notice to have a public hearing at the June 22nd meeting. The council had authorized the preparation of a feasibility study for Mary Lake a while back, and we are getting very close to having that wrapped up. As part of the permitting process, we are required to have a public hearing as required by the DNR in order for them to permit the project. So this is going to fulfill that commitment. Just as a heads up, we are planning to present information to the city of Excelsior at one of their upcoming council meetings before the public hearing, so that we get them information and get them informed. And then at the June 22nd, we would also present the feasibility study prior to the public hearing, so that we share all of the information with that. So I don't plan on getting into many details tonight unless there's some questions on stuff, but I'll share most of that for the presentation of the feasibility study.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
I think it's good to keep the project moving.
Is there any idea on the DNR response time once the public hearing is accomplished?
So the DNR, the actual permitting probably won't start until we get about a 60% complete plan set, like a final design plan set. So right now we're still in the feasibility stage. Once we finish that, we'll get authorization to go into final design. Once we get through that, probably about halfway, a little bit past halfway, that final design plans will be ready enough to submit to the permitting agencies for them to start doing review. I think the city's done a very good job of keeping everyone in the loop. I mean, we'd started that with Bar Engineering started doing that when they were doing that. So I anticipate their process would probably be a month to 2 month permitting process, but we're also running parallel by finishing up the construction plans, getting approval of the plans by the city council, advertising and bidding. And so we feel that we still have adequate time in the schedule to go through that process and still get started with construction and hopefully wrapped up with construction this year.
Okay, great. Thank you. If there's no other questions, is there a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve, accept the resolution for the notice for public hearing for the Mary Lake Outlet, City Project 1909.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Cycle and a second by Johnson.
Mayor Zerby, there's somebody with their hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
I recognize him.
Go
Hello,
ahead.
this is Maeve Gallivan. This is not related to this vote, but I was wondering if I could speak because I think there was different Zoom meeting info sent in the agenda, but I just got the right one from one of your staff.
Okay. Do you have a comment on the Mary Lake project?
No, I don't.
Okay. Let me finish the Mary Lake and then I'll get right back to you. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Again, we have a motion by Cycle and a second by Johnson for the public hearing, setting the public hearing notice on Mary Lake Outlet. So I will call the vote by roll call. Johnson,
Aye.
Labadie,
Aye.
Cycle,
Aye.
Zerby votes aye also. So that public hearing notice is approved. And now we will go back, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. Can you give us your name and address for the record, and then go ahead with your question or comment?
Sure, this is Maeve Gallivan. I'm at 22680 Galpin Lane in Shorewood. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak a little later in here, but I wanted to provide you all, I spoke with you at your last meeting about the Galpin Lake Road sidewalk and kind of the issues around there. And I just wanted to speak to provide an update. I did take action on creating a petition online that's basically it's been sent to all of our representative, our state senator, and Governor Walz every time somebody signs. We actually have garnered 104 signatures on this petition, and it's been completely organic and just neighbors sharing with neighbors. So I'm quite confident that it really is all local Shorewood residents. And there are folks that have signed it that commented on living here for as long as 20 years to as recent as, between 1 and 7 years, but they all have a number of reasons as to why they're requesting funding for this road. And it really comes down to safety, access to the school, and just it being a project a long time coming. So we plan on personally calling our members in addition to having these petitions sent to them to let them know at the state level that this is a community concern. And I just ask, if possible, if anyone on the council is able to also have those conversations to see if there's a path forward, we would all greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. That's good news and very impressive in terms of the amount of response you're getting.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm wondering if it wouldn't help at this point to add, and not tonight, but at our next meeting, potentially a resolution from the council in support of this, just to give another, a little more emphasis to it and show that the council is behind this as well.
Absolutely, I can prepare one.
Okay, I think council would share that as well, but we can certainly discuss it. But we'll put something on our agenda for the next meeting and discuss it. And I think that would be helpful as well if you had could show that support from our council.
Excellent. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other raised hands, so I will move on. Number 9 is general new business. Letter A is a resolution approving on-sale liquor license fee rebate, and we have a memo from our city clerk and HR director, resolution 20-055. Sandy.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item is as a result of the governor's order on March 17th, which shuttered a couple of our local businesses in Shorewood, American Legion and Tino's. And the council, like many other cities and counties, would like to do something for these businesses. And in tonight's resolution, we are requesting that they would allow for a 25% rebate to their liquor license fees for these 2 on-sale liquor licensees in the city of Shorewood to allow for this downtime. The council may modify that amount or deny it or approve that amount. You can see in the resolution that there were several other cities and counties. That's not all inclusive. That's just some of them who are choosing to do those same things for their establishments. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
Sandy, I thought it was very helpful having the comparison what other cities are doing. I'm just wondering if there's any other South Lake cities who are doing something like this. Specifically, has Excelsior done this?
Mhm.
I do not know the answer to that, but I did not see readily that any of the surrounding cities had done it yet, but I know there were a lot of cities that were considering it. And everybody was at a different stage in that. So I wouldn't be quick to say no, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's a good idea, and we only have a couple, so I'm fine with it. I think supporting these people would be a good thing, and it's minimal.
Yeah, I also think it's a great idea. So I will make a motion to approve the resolution for on-sale liquor license rebates due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'll second.
All right, we have a second by motion by Labadie and a second by Johnson. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Johnson,
Aye.
Labadie,
Aye.
Cycle,
Aye.
and Zerby votes aye also. Thank you, Sandy, for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The next item is 9B, which is a temporary expansion of outdoor premises to on-sale liquor establishments. This is also yours, Sandy. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So this resolution before you tonight is to expand the outdoor seating areas and also the 2 on-sale liquor establishments that we have in Shorewood, Tino's and the American Legion. This executive order that was signed by the governor just Thursday afternoon allows that they are able to open and serve outdoor customers on June 1st. This order provided that they would expect that many of them don't have sufficient seating to accommodate for social distancing and some of the practices, being that they'd only have outdoor patrons and not indoor. So this would allow them to expand that outdoor seating area without having to go through a typical process, which is a lot more intensive than the temporary process that we're proposing here, which would be a simple, the city would look at their plans to make sure that it was contiguous and contained, and they would be allowed to move forward with that. There are 4 regulations that the city would also ask of those businesses. And once again, this resolution is set forth, and you may modify it, deny it, or approve it as it is. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council?
How would this work for somebody like the Legion, who is surrounded by residential properties?
Capacity.
Pardon?
So what's the capacity? Where would they, is it 2 tables, 10 tables? Is it till, yeah, I think there's some considerations of neighbors there.
Well, the parameters are pretty detailed in the governor's order about how far apart the tables are, what the reservations can be, and so forth. The actual idea of how the space is done is fairly consistent with how it would be done at any time, not even in a temporary situation, where it needs to be a contiguous part of the already premises, meaning the indoor. Be like you're going to serve across the parking lot, and it has to be, still has to be contained. So there has to be a fenced off area, or you may, as you can probably seen, you can do that with plants or some sort of plantings, or, they get pretty creative at how they make a contained area, but those two criteria would still apply. You can't just open up your parking lot to anybody who wants to be served there. So those are still things that the city would take into consideration, just as if it were coming through for an expansion at any time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just, sure.
I know currently their outdoor seating is screened behind fencing, so it's a pretty good size area, but I don't know how that works into this plan.
And Mayor, members of the council, this doesn't mean that our two establishments are going to take advantage of this. It just means that they can if they'd like to.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the temporary expansion of outdoor premises to on-sale establishments in Shorewood.
I'll second it. All right. Mr. Johnson, do you have a question or a comment?
No, I will support this. I just want to make sure that the city is going to be looking at what can be done at the American Legion with the understanding of noise pollution to the existing neighbors. That's my hesitation.
I see Sandy nodding her head, and I know the Legion has been a good partner for Shorewood, so I'm sure we'll have a conversation on that.
Yeah, I guess we've never been through this, right? So now you're granting somebody the ability to, so I share your comment or your thoughts, Patrick. So it's like, I guess what's going through mine is like the what if, what if it gets, I don't know, I suppose social distancing, if you're keeping that, you're going to be pretty limited to how many people you can fit on that patio and stuff. So maybe we're just overthinking it, and they've been a pretty good partner. We've never had an issue with the Legion.
All right.
So yeah. I'll go ahead and second. Oh, you already did. Never mind.
I did. Yep.
Sorry.
Patrick, you were saying something?
I agree with Debbie's comment about the what if. I look at the bar in the Ozarks that was absolutely packed. Would it happen here? Most likely not. But what are our tools if something like that does happen? Is this police enforcement that we send them right away to break it up?
No,
I think it would have to go the route at that point of a complaint and a resulting call to the police and a visit by the police. This is merely giving these two establishments the ability to do this. They're not the applicant, so they may not even be seeking this. This is just giving them the opportunity to now approach this as an option. I share your concerns, absolutely. But I think it would be different if we were dealing with 250 potential businesses this would be affecting. But we're really dealing with two businesses. And like Councilmember Cycle said, the Legion has been a wonderful partner in so many aspects to our city, so.
Well, and I do just want to add, Mayor and members of the council, that when we notify both the American Legion and Tino's of this action, they will get a list of all those requirements and rules that have been mandated in that executive order that they must follow in order to do this. So they've been a wonderful partner, and I can't see them doing anything that would tarnish, what we've seen so far from them. So
I guess the final question, if something did and a complaint was filed, didn't you have the opportunity to, withdraw this, action? Again, I'm assuming nothing will happen, but just, can it be withdrawn at some point if there are a lot of complaints or something happens, is my point.
And the short answer to that is yes, this is not the award of any additional rights that inure to the license holder. This is a permissive grant of an expanded use of the licensed premises. There may be some discussion at the permitting phase of restricting sound or music beyond the boundary of the licensed premises, but I think staff can figure that out.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just thinking, you know, sometimes there's just unintended consequences of an action, and I don't think any of us intend to. We want to help, not harm. So then you start kind of thinking through things. So that's fine.
Well, these are uncharted waters for all of us.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Keen.
You know, we do have the word in there, temporary expansion. I don't know if council should address it with a more definite date or like a time frame, or does council feel comfortable with the word temporary?
I see you leave it as temporary. I mean, who knows where this is going to go.
Right.
I'm okay. We can move forward. I'm all right if Councilmember Jonathan's okay. I don't want to overthink, and it's just thinking through. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. Then I think it's time to call the vote. Johnson.
Aye.
Labadie.
Aye.
Eichel.
Aye.
Zerby. Aye. That motion is approved. Thank you. We'll move on to 9C, which is the old 2F, right-of-way encroachment agreement for 5885 Mill Street. We have a memo from our city administrator, Mr. LaRue.
Mayor Zerby, City Council members, staff has been working with the owner of 5885 Mill Street to provide a water service line following direction from the council at our meeting on the 11th. We sent out a draft agreement that was included with the original packet. We've had conversations with the owner about changes, and staff has reviewed those changes, and they're acceptable, and I'd like to go over them with you. I will just highlight the changes as we go through. Under the recitals, the third whereas, where it references Exhibit B. Exhibit B will be properly described once the line goes in. Then we will describe it in greater detail than just a more general description. I would point out that on the fourth whereas, the property owner has already paid the $10,000 to the city. There were no changes on 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the original draft agreement that went out. Under 5, and the property owner's here, if she wishes to speak, she certainly can. There was a lot of discussion back and forth about kind of the open-endedness of this and the burden that would put on the property owner. And that is true. The city's position was, as long as this line is under right-of-way, it is a private line and owner responsibility of the landowner. However, a compromise was reached on this where should the water main ever be extended down to the end of Division Street, the city, as part of that project, would reconnect the service line to a new curb stop, which would be installed as part of the project anyway. And so that was added. There would not be another water access charge due to either Shorewood or Excelsior if that occurred. 6 stayed the same. 7, we did a little change. We will have an Exhibit B that we will maintain and provide if we get requests for, go for state 1 called locating utilities. It is very clear that this is a private line, but we will make our best effort to make anybody seeking a right-of-way permit aware of the presence of the line. In item 8, we added a couple of reasonable, no, I'm sorry, 8, it was unchanged, I believe. Under 9, we did add a couple of reasonable, all reasonable costs and expenses, and all reasonable claims and liability. That was an addition. Nothing to 10. Nothing to 11. Number 12 was an add request that once the line, this private line were to be connected to a water main extension, that the city provided satisfaction to the property owner, ensuring that the provisions of this agreement have been met and it's no longer a burden against the property. So with that, Tim and I and Larry will answer questions if you have any.
All right. Are there any questions for the staff at this time? All right.
No.
Then I see that Kathy Bakken is here. Kathy, you're now unmuted. Would you like to speak to the council or just wait for questions?
Yeah, actually, I would very much like to thank you all for helping work with me and get this through so quickly. I mean, upon your approval and stuff, I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Who's Katie and Alex, by the way?
Oh, it was a wedding shower that we had, and I can't get the screen off. And I didn't want to mess it up. So there it is.
I've been waiting so long to ask that question. Thank you.
Yeah, we had to have a Zoom shower, so.
That's great. Well, I'm glad for them. Thank you.
And a water theme, so that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any questions of staff or the applicant? If not, I would look for a motion.
Wasn't that on the consent agenda? Do we need a motion to approve it?
We moved it from the consent agenda to discuss the changes that were made since the agenda packet went out.
I'll make a resolution, or I'll make a motion to approve the resolution approving of a right-of-way encroachment agreement for 5885 Milton.
I'll second that.
Right.
Was that cycle? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Johnson and a second by Cycle. Hearing no other comments, I'll call the vote by roll call. Johnson?
Aye.
Labadie?
Aye.
Cycle?
Aye.
And Zerby votes aye also. All right, thank you so much and enjoy that water.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good thing to have.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to number 10, which is staff and council reports. Letter A is administrator and staff reports. We have a couple items. The first is the utility rates. And this is a memo from
Mayor, Shorewood City Council members, this is a time of year where staff normally brings recommendations for rates in our utility funds. Given the situation this year, it seemed appropriate that this be delayed for a period of time. We're probably thinking third or fourth quarter this year that we would come back to the council with a recommendation. But for now, I just want to make you aware that we're not bringing anything forward.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you. The next item is the April general fund budget report. We have a memo from our finance director. There he is.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is the April general fund report. We're looking at 4 months into the year, or approximately.
Joe, you have a bad connection. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, my computer audio was not working.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Barely.
Basically a summarized report, so I won't take your time and try to listen to this. It's if you have any questions, go ahead and give me an opening.
All right. I heard Joe say if we have any questions, we can call him for further explanation. Thank you, Joe. The next item is a reopening update. Mr. LaRue.
I think I kind of took care of this during matters from the floor, but we are working. We have some policies in place. We'll be putting up some physical barriers, and all of that will be part of the policy when we bring it forward for council review and approval.
All right, thank you. So then we'll go around the table. Mr. Brown.
I have nothing further.
All right. Joe, anything else? So you know his mic is hurting, so nothing there. Sandy? Nothing else?
Yeah, just one thing. I actually just had to duck out at the beginning of our meeting for like 15 minutes because we had a tornado warning.
Yeah.
And it was kind of crazy and the weather got nuts and we are in a new house and we had to go figure out where we'd go if a tornado actually came, and then they canceled it like 15 minutes later. So sorry for ducking out at the beginning of the meeting, but that's my excitement. But that's all I have for tonight.
Yeah, glad you're safe. Andrew? All right. Keen?
I don't have anything to add, Mayor.
Mr. LaRue?
I have nothing.
All right.
Oh, we got three though.
What? Sorry? Oh, I see. Marie. Sorry, this whole Brady Bunch thing is throwing me in how to call on people. Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we did get the 2019 population estimate from the Metropolitan Council. They are currently estimating our population at 7,934 people and 2,902 households. That's an increase in terms of population anyway, from 7,693 last year.
All right.
And I have one more update for you as well. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that the playground opened up before the Memorial Day weekend. So we had lots of kids out playing on all the new playground equipment. And we're hoping to have the last remaining piece of concrete work done this week, but they delayed it due to the expected rain. So I'll have to reschedule with them, but hopefully we can get that last piece finished so we can wrap up this project.
Yeah, I drove by it today and it looks fabulous. You guys did a really good job on that. Thank you. It's a really nice addition to the whole park, and the whole area now has really come together. So thank you much. All right, then we'll go to council. Patrick?
Nothing.
Jennifer?
Nothing. Fire board meeting tomorrow night if anyone wants to zoom into that.
All right. Debbie?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, I have nothing else to report as well. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Greg, for dealing with those last minute technical issues. And Sandy, we're glad you're safe from the tornado. So thank you so much.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yep, I was just gonna say, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Sounds like a
motion to.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Johnson and a second by Labadie. And I'll do the roll call. Johnson?
Aye.
Labadie?
Aye.
Cycle?
Aye.
And Zerby votes aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
guys.